Some people compare Pompeii with the people of Lot because of its open pleasure culture and sudden destruction. But history gives us a more complicated picture. Children are laughing in the streets. Markets are opening. Traders are shouting. The smell of fresh food fills the air. It is just another normal morning, but before the sun rises again, this entire city will be gone from the earth. Not slowly, not with warning, in a single afternoon. This is not a legend. This is not a story someone made up. This actually happened. And the city that vanished left behind secrets so dark, so human, so disturbing, that we are still uncovering them today. This is the unknown history of Pompeii. It is August 24th, 79 CE. A city of about 11,000 people is waking up. The city is called Pompeii. It sits in southern Italy, at the foot of a massive mountain called Mount Vesuvius. And right now, on this morning, everything looks perfectly fine. In the bakeries, workers are already pulling loaves from stone ovens. On the streets, shopkeepers are rolling back their wooden shutters. In the markets, traders are setting out fish, vegetables, cloth, and pottery. Children are running between the legs of adults. Dogs are wandering in the alleys. In the villas at the edge of town, wealthy men and women are still asleep on silk cushions. And in the dark corners of the city, slaves are already at work, hours before anyone else. This was Pompeii. Not just a city, a world, with all its beauty, all its cruelty, all its secrets. But behind all of this, Mount Vesuvius was watching, waiting. Pompeii was not a small village. It was a prosperous Roman city. It had paved roads with stepping stones so people could cross without getting their feet dirty. It had fountains fed by an advanced underground water system. It had public bathhouses where citizens bathed, gossiped, made deals, and relaxed. It had theaters where plays were performed, arenas where gladiators fought. It had temples dedicated to Roman gods, Jupiter, Venus, Apollo. It had over 150 wine bars, called thermopolia, where people gathered every evening. The walls of Pompeii were covered in paintings, not just decoration, political messages, advertisements, poetry, jokes, even graffiti. Yes, graffiti. Over 11,000 examples have been found, written by real people, real voices. One wall reads, "I am amazed, O wall, that you have not fallen under the weight of so much written nonsense." Pompeii was alive, messy, loud, beautiful, and at its center was wealth. Grand villas with courtyards, gardens, mosaic floors, and painted walls. Rich merchants who made fortunes in trade, wine, olive oil, fish sauce, cloth, and stone. The elite of Pompeii lived well, very well. But beauty on the surface often hides what is underneath, and Pompeii had a great deal hidden underneath. But Pompeii had another face, one that did not appear in the paintings of gods and goddesses, one that was hidden behind the beautiful walls. Pompeii ran on slavery. A large portion of the people living in this city were enslaved men, women, and children. They had no rights, no freedom, no names of their own. They worked in the bakeries, locked in at night, grinding grain by hand, or attached to stone mills alongside donkeys. They worked in the fields under the burning Italian sun. They cleaned the villas, cooked the food, carried the litters, raised the children of people who owned them. For the wealthy of Pompeii, slaves were furniture, and the records show that slaves were sometimes branded, chained, punished publicly. This was the darkness that the fountains and theaters could not wash away. And then there was another kind of darkness. Pompeii was a Roman city, and Roman culture was complex. The city had what historians call a pleasure culture. There were brothels, called lupanare. At least one major one has been excavated by archaeologists. The walls of this building were covered in erotic frescoes, images meant to identify the services available inside. This was not hidden, it was open. Part of Roman life. Wine, desire, excess. Pleasure was sold behind red curtains, in shadowy rooms, in locked doors that led to darker places. And none of this was considered shameful in Pompeii. That was the culture. That was the city. Beautiful on the streets, dark behind the walls. Now, here is something that many people wonder about. Some people, especially from religious traditions, look at Pompeii and see a pattern. A city with open pleasure culture, a city of excess, a city destroyed suddenly and completely, and they compare it to the story of the people of Lot, an ancient people from religious scripture, a people said to have lived in moral darkness, and then wiped out in a single moment. The comparison is powerful, and emotionally it feels like it fits, but history tells us something more complex. Normal people, living normal lives, families who were holding each other when the end came. So while some people see Pompeii as a warning from history, historians see something more human, more tragic, more complicated. Pompeii was not a city of evil people. It was a city of human people. And that is what makes its story so haunting, because it could happen anywhere, at any time, to anyone. And now, the part that history almost never mentions. Vesuvius did not explode without warning. It gave signs, many signs. For years before 79 CE, the region had been shaken by earthquakes. A massive earthquake in 62 CE, 17 years earlier, had already cracked buildings, broken aqueducts, and caused widespread damage. The people of Pompeii had rebuilt and moved on. In the weeks before the eruption, tremors returned. Small shakes, vibrations in the ground. Wells began to dry up. Springs went silent. Animals were disturbed. Dogs barked strangely. Birds disappeared. And from the peak of Vesuvius, small wisps of smoke and steam had been rising for days. But the people of Pompeii did not understand what they were looking at. They had no word for volcano, no science to explain it. To them, Vesuvius was just a mountain, green and fertile, covered in vineyards. A beautiful mountain that had always been there, that had always been quiet, until it wasn't. Then came the afternoon, but first, Vesuvius exploded, not slowly. The top of the mountain blew apart with a force that historians estimate was 100,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. A column of superheated gas, ash, and rock shot 20 miles into the sky. The sky above Pompeii turned black. In the middle of the afternoon, people stopped, stared, could not process what they were seeing. Then the ash began to fall. At first it looked like snow, light, soft, floating down slowly. Then it came faster, heavier. Then came the pumice stones, rocks the size of fists, raining from the sky. Roofs began to crack under the weight. People ran into their homes, tied pillows to their heads for protection. Screaming filled the streets. Some people tried to flee the city, running toward the harbor, running toward the fields. Some stayed, hiding in cellars, under staircases, behind locked doors, believing it would stop. It did not stop. The ash kept falling. The sky stayed black. The ground kept shaking. Buildings collapsed. Streets became rivers of gray. And in the darkness, people could no longer find each other. Families were separated. Parents called out for children they could not see. And then came something even worse. It is called a pyroclastic surge. Most people have never heard those words, but they are two of the most terrifying words in the history of natural disasters. A pyroclastic surge is a wave of superheated gas, ash, and rock, moving faster than a passenger jet, at temperatures above 500 degrees Celsius. It does not slow down. It does not stop. It does not go around. It goes through everything. In the early hours of August 25th, that wave came down the mountain. The people who had sheltered in their homes, in their cellars, behind locked doors, they had no more time. In seconds, the city fell silent. The markets were empty. The bakeries were still. The wine bars were dark. The children were no longer running. The dogs were no longer barking. Even the fountains had gone quiet. Pompeii had been alive for centuries. And in one afternoon, in one night, in one terrible morning, it ceased to exist. The ash settled, the silence came, and the mountain that had watched over the city for so long was now its burial ground. And then Pompeii disappeared from history. For over 1,700 years, buried under layers of ash and volcanic rock, forgotten, lost, covered over by the earth itself. Until 1748, when workers digging in the region struck something hard beneath the soil: stone walls, painted frescoes, coins, pottery, bread still in the ovens, an entire city perfectly preserved. Time had stopped on August 24th, 79 CE, and never restarted. But the most haunting discovery came later. As archaeologists excavated deeper, they found hollow spaces in the hardened ash, strange, empty voids, perfectly shaped. They poured plaster into those voids, and when the plaster hardened and the ash was cleared away, they saw the final moments of real human beings. A man covering his face with his arm, a woman curled on her side, a child pressed against a wall, a dog chained, unable to run. These were not statues. These were people, real, breathing, living people who had been alive on an ordinary morning. And now, frozen in their last moments, they were speaking to us across 2,000 years, telling us something we did not want to hear: that life can end in a single afternoon, that everything we build, everything we own, everything we love can be gone before the sun rises again. So what do we do with Pompeii?